Yeah, I talked to Chief Huntley because when we were on the town hall meeting yesterday, my wife got my attention and said, "Hey, they crowding up here." But yeah, that's where they were playing basketball and everything. But I mean, the police are doing everything in their lawful capacity to handle the situation. But it's just up to us as a community, to start taking it more serious.
Yeah, and I don't imagine any tickets or anything will be written. All they're going to do is just talk to him and say, "Hey, it's in your best interest. Please go home." But if they don't go home, there's not really much the police can or should do at this point.
Yes.
Yeah, Mayor, this is Gene. Paula's having some difficulty connecting. If you can give me a couple of minutes, I'll see if I can walk her through that.
Yeah, that's fine. And we also need to get Dr. Hashmi on here. I don't see him on yet.
Okay, all right. I'm going to mute myself while I talk to her.
Okay.
Doing good? That's good. Let me know.
I will.
Yes, sir. I'm seeing a phone number here that I guess is you. It looks like you're muted. So I don't know what you have to do on the phone to unmute. Or maybe Russell. Russell, if you're on, could you unmute that phone number? That's Dr. Hashmi.
Try now.
Yeah, I got unmuted.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. AJ, we can hear you. And Russell, if you're on, if you'll replace that number with his name, that would be very useful too.
I'm not sure who Moto EFX is.
Okay, Paula should be connected now.
I muted her.
I don't know, just me go there. Like, I don't know who Moto EFX is. I was looking at online, like, this is that. It wasn't like flags on blonde. But I took myself out.
So is this just doctors and stuff that we can?
Hey, Janice, will you want to scroll that agenda down a little bit? It's clipping the main part of it.
Well, no.
There you go.
Yeah, good.
Thank you.
I think that was Russell. Thank you.
Russell. Okay, Russell. Sorry.
Well, so has anyone asked a question while we're getting drive-through?
Right now, they're just setting everybody.
Okay, let's see who all we got. If we can see if we're ready to start this thing. We've got Dr. Hashmi, myself, Ms. Stone, Ms. Portugal. We're still missing Mr. Pilgrim. No, but Ms. Pilgrim's on, Mr. Hughes, Mr. Plata's on. We got everybody, don't we?
Benny Plata's not on, but he didn't know if he would be able to do this today.
Okay.
No, I'm here. I'm on.
Yeah,
Oh, you are? Okay.
I'm on.
I'm sorry, Benny.
Is Linda on?
No.
Linda's not on. That's right. We're missing Linda. Oh, let me call her and see if she's available. Hey, Linda, we're on the meeting. You're the last one. You haven't made it on yet. No problem, Mike. Give it back. Linda, be on just a second.
Okay.
Have a good one. What?
You know, like if you're gonna announce it at 11, let's get this, like, everybody get together around 10 and get it lined up.
Yeah, give it a test run. About 30 minutes ahead,
Yeah.
at least.
Yeah, you know, come prepared. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Hey, can y'all hear me? I got a question about this damn SARS. COVID-19, I got a question.
There's Hosh.
I just want to see if they can hear us. I don't
I'm
know.
having a hard time hearing you. It's Paula.
Can y'all hear me?
I'm sure.
Yes.
Well, what's your question?
Russell, let me know as soon as Linda's on. And we'll start it as soon as she gets on.
Don't see her yet.
I just called her on the phone and she was getting ready to log in.
Steve, I have a question.
Yes.
After you've opened the agenda, do you want me to describe a little bit about mass testing and things like that before you open the discussion for that?
Yeah, I thought I'd let you talk about that and I'll join in on that conversation since we're the two main medical people on this call.
Okay.
And kind of have a discussion of the pros and cons and answer anybody's questions. And then hopefully we make an informed decision on this.
All right, sounds good.
She's still not connected. I don't see her anywhere.
I sure want her on here because I know she's wanting to be on. She may be having some trouble. I don't know if you want to call her. I'll call her again, see if she's having any trouble.
She's here. She just unmuted.
Oh, okay. Yay.
I'm sorry.
Great. Okay, no
I
problem.
apologize to everybody for so late.
Okay, I think we've got everybody. So let's call this emergency meeting of the City Council of Paris to order. It is now 11:08. And the only item that we have on our agenda, I'll read it, and then Dr. Hashmi and I will try to explain this and we'll invite comment. Item number 2 here is receive public comment, discuss and act on an ordinance amending the fiscal year 2019 to 2020 budget by increasing the budget in the amount of $510,000, authorizing and directing the Director of Finance to transfer funds from general fund reserves to the general expenses budget for the purpose of conducting a COVID-19 drive-through testing center for residents of the city of Paris and to authorize an expenditure not to exceed $510,000 to fund said testing center. I'll just let Dr. Hashmi talk about this first, and then I'll probably talk a little bit and have a discussion, and then we'll open it up for everybody. Dr. Hashmi?
Yes. So first of all, thank you for having me on. I'm going to describe a few things about mass testing, then the types of tests available, brief description, not a lengthy discussion, and then I'll have a few comments. So the goal of mass test, and please stop me wherever you want to and I'll answer. The goal of mass testing are to accurately test most people to determine their status in relation to this infectious disease so that they can go on with their life. The large majority of people fall into the following categories. Number one, people who have either COVID positive but with or without symptoms. Some results show whether or not infected patients' immune system seems to have responded well or not. People who are not exposed to the virus yet, or people that have immunologically responded and have had a good antibody response and possibly be an antibody donor to help fight the virus in other people, and people who are able to go back to work and be unaffected by the virus and currently not transmitting the virus, even if they were positive for the virus at some point in the past. So there are two major groups of testing. One is a gene test, and one is an immunological test. The gene test that you hear about is the one that is done by the nasal swabs, and a positive gene test, and I'm going to repeat it again. A positive gene test means the person is actively shedding the virus and is contagious. A negative gene test means that the person is not shedding the virus, and they are not shedding the virus because either they are not contagious or they have not been exposed to the infection. Or even if they have been exposed to the infection, they are not shedding the virus anymore. That means that they are somebody who's been exposed to the virus but currently is not infective to others. The second test which is being done is the immunological test. The immunological test basically checks a drop of blood against a control, and it's an immunoglobulin, which is the infection-fighting part of the blood, that gives the results. So if an immunoglobulin, and the test that we are talking about is an immunoglobulin test. So if the immunoglobulin test is negative, the test indicates the person has not been exposed to COVID-19 virus, meaning that they have potentially a risk of getting the virus. Now, if the test is positive, there are two parts of the test. There are three lines on the test. One is a control line, one is a line which is IgM, and one is a line which is IgG. IgM are the immunoglobulins which come early in the course, so that if I get an infection, the first thing that fights the infection in the body are the IgM antibodies. And so if it is an early infection, the IgM will be positive. The second part of the test comes if both IgM and IgG are positive, which means that two lines are positive along with the control, which means that it's a new infection, so that it means that I'm in the middle phase of infection where the early phase antibodies are also there, but the late phase antibodies are also there, so that I'm somewhere in the middle of that infection. Then the third line sometimes comes up, which is a control line, and an IgG line will come up. And that means that not only have I been exposed, but now I have antibodies in me, so I am non-infective anymore. Not only am I non-infective, but I have enough more antibodies in me that if I was to donate my blood or plasma actually for somebody who is an active infection and in respiratory difficulties, etc., my blood can be used for those people because now I have antibodies to that. Now, there are some false positives and false negatives, and Steve will address that too. However, the test is a very good test. And one important thing that I do want to say before I go any further is that I am not proposing anything. I'm not proposing a company. The company that called me is the company. I have no financial interest in it. I have no personal friendships in it. I have no business with the company before or after. This is the company that had called, and I had passed the information. If you guys find a different company to get it, it makes no difference to me. The purpose here is to just make sure that the community gets tested. It is not a business proposition of any kind for myself or that I'm benefiting in any way or form. So if this is in anyone's mind that I'm doing it for any personal gains, please take it out, because it's got nothing to do with it. If you find a different company who offers the city some better choices, please do go ahead with it. The order has not been placed. We had decided to do it, but you can do it or not do it. It's totally up to the council on which way they feel good or bad about it. I do want to say one thing, that the company normally does not provide it for less than 25,000 people. They are willing to give it 20,000 of these kits. The kits are last about 2 years, so that even if you don't use the kit today, it will be, as long as you have not opened that slide, it is good for the next 2 years for positive or negative. Now, I would like Steve to just discuss one thing which is kind of, it's a very medical thing, but that's how we go by, which is sensitivities and specificities for this test. So I'm going to ask him to describe that, and then I'll also add my few cents in it.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hashmi. Yeah, I wanted to discuss first I have a question for you, Dr. Hashmi. Do you think that is there the possibility of ordering fewer tests than this, or why? I guess the question is why aren't these any more available than they are right now?
What is the question?
Why is it that these tests are relatively hard to come by?
Well, because every city, every hospital, every town wants it, every state wants it. And so that is why, and they're not I mean, personally, I would love to have it in my office, but I can't buy 20,000 kits. But what can happen is if the city gets a large number of kits, I can tell you one thing, I will buy 100 kits from the city if they would sell it to me, because the thing about it is we all need to have the kits. That is my feeling. The exposure is very high, but I think not just for my office, but I think all in all, I think it's very beneficial for the city to know precisely where we stand, and I think it's a very good service. It's the best service that any city can provide at this point, considering what is going around these days. Now, why do they not offer smaller number? They don't smaller number because there's a huge demand. After all, they're business people. There's a huge demand, and I don't think they want to deal with me or one individual ordering 100 kits or 50 kits. They have plenty of buyers right now, so they want to deal with a larger number than a smaller number.
And then it's up to the buyers to further distribute it. I guess that's what's happening. So,
I did not see, or they have not said anything that if you want to sell it for, buy it at 25 or sell it for 50, that anyone can stop you from doing it. I mean, it's your product once you have it. You can sell it at whatever price you feel like selling it at.
Okay, well, we'll get back to that in a minute. I did want to discuss a little bit about the pros and cons of mass testing. And I'll try not to get too scientific, although we do have some scientific minds on here. One thing I'll mention first off, the nasal swab test, my son's an ER doctor in Chicago. He uses it all the time. He says the test he uses has about a 25% false negative rate, which is kind of a bad thing. Meaning what that means is if 4 people are infected with coronavirus, and those 4 people take the test will come back positive on 3 of them, and the test will be wrong on the 4th one, and it will come back negative. So that's a downside of the test that's being used right now. The advantage of that test is its specificity, meaning if that test comes back positive, you have the virus and you're shedding it, as Dr. Hashmi said. So that is one type of test. This type of test measures whether your body has formed antibodies against the virus. And there are 2 antibodies. There's the IgM, which comes up fairly early, I understand, between 24 and 48 hours after you've been exposed. The IgM levels will reach a point where they will trigger this test positive. Shortly after, a few days later, I guess probably 7 to 10 days, I guess, Dr. Hashmi, the IgG kicks in, and then you'll have a combination of IgG and IgM, both of which are antibodies that fight the virus. Then later on, the IgM will drop off, and as you have overcome it completely, you'll reach a point where you're asymptomatic, but you still have antibodies against it. And so this test can be used for a variety of purposes. It can be used to see whether you're currently positive and you currently have the virus. It can be seen, let's say you had an infection and you're wanting to go back to work and you think you had coronavirus. and now then they test you, and sure enough, you've got antibodies against it. There may come a time when these tests may be used to allow people to go back to work. The whole country is playing by ear right now, but these tests may be very useful in that regard. As regards to mass testing is much more efficient and more effective when there is a larger percentage of people in your population who are infected. Let's say this test, they have done limited, it's been FDA approved, but they've only done limited testing of the one test that Dr. Hashmi sent me that showed that they had tested it on 20 people in China that had the virus. All 20 tests came back positive. And so it's a high degree of accuracy for if you have the virus, this test will be positive, and that's a good thing. It's actually probably more accurate than the nasal swab for a variety of reasons. Sometimes there's an inadequate nasal swab is done. Now, the downside are what are called false negatives. So in this same test, this article that Dr. Hashmi sent me, they tested 50 people who did not have the virus. And I think there was one or two, I forget, that tested positive, even though they did not have the virus. And there's reasons this can happen. It can cross-react with other viruses and things like that. So the problem is, if you have a false positive rate of, let's say, 2%, meaning 98% of the time you're right, let's say, for instance, half the population has this, and we test 100 people, 50 of those people will test positive, and 2 of those people will test positive who do not have the virus. So we'll have 52 people who are positive, and only 2 of those 52 will actually not have the virus. So that would be extremely accurate. Now imagine the reverse. We have 1% incidence of the virus in our community. We now test 100 people. 1 person is positive, and 2 people are positive because of a false positive. Now we have 3 people who are positive, but in fact, only 1 out of those 3 people actually has the virus. So that's the downside of doing mass testing. So it can change. Mass testing would be very, very useful in a community that had a high incidence of the virus. And it can still be useful in a community the size of Paris because it can let us know the incidence of it. And even though it might have some false positives, we would find the people who are walking around shedding the virus and don't know it. And so we might have to quarantine some people, repeat the test and make sure that it's a true positive, and possibly even do a follow-up test. So that's the downside of doing mass testing. And so we need to keep that in mind. But I think these test kits, as Dr. Hashmi mentioned, would be of immense benefit to, let's say, Paris Regional Medical Center, and they have a patient who comes in who may have coronavirus, they have symptoms. They need to know right then and there whether the patient has a high likelihood of having the virus. If they do this test and this test comes back negative, it is extremely likely that they do not have coronavirus. Why is that beneficial? Because now they can treat the patient like a normal patient, put him in a normal bed, not put him up in the COVID area of the hospital, not take up a critical bed in that regard. It also helps protect the healthcare workers, because they will, this person definitely has the virus and we have to take extra precautions, or this person almost certainly does not have the virus. Information is a good thing. So the hospital would have high use for this, and we can decide what we'll do with these kits. We could sell them at our cost to the hospitals, assuming that can be legally done. I have to get some advice on that from Ms. Harris, but I'm assuming that we would be able to sell the kits to, we could also sell them to the individual physicians who might wish to test symptomatic people before they let them in their office. We might want to test the people who are currently on quarantine, and we don't have the ability to do that right now, and we may not for several more weeks. So all in all, this would have an immediate large benefit for the population. Now, the downside, we're still going to be required to buy 20,000 kits, and that's a lot of money. And that's the real decision we've got to make here is, do we want to do this? And is this worth going ahead and getting the 20,000 kits? I think it's highly likely we could get rid of these kits pretty easily at cost, and therefore we wouldn't get stuck at them. I don't want a situation where we get 10,000 kits that we don't use and we've wasted money on them. And I truly don't know the answer to the question. My inclination at this point is we go ahead and get this and we will initially test. We'll have to have decisions about who to test and when to test. But the immediate thing to test would be the quarantine people, to deliver some of these to the healthcare facility, this community, and possibly in surrounding communities. We might be able to help them out. We could at a minimum, we would want to test people in the Paris area who show symptoms. Those people run a much greater risk of carrying the virus, and the false positive problem that these tests have is less significant when you're dealing with a population that has a higher likelihood of having the virus. So at a minimum, what we would do is set up a drive-through testing center for symptomatic patients, and how we charge or whether we charge would have to be determined. This might be something that we could do for the citizens of Paris. We could do it at a small loss. We could do it free. We could do it at cost. We'd have to decide how we wanted to do it, and that would be a decision that would be made later. Since the city of Paris would be footing the bill for this, we might well be willing to test people outside the city, but we might be obliged to charge them at least enough to cover our costs. These are decisions we will have to make down the road, and I'm not about to make them right now, but I just throw these out there for consideration. The real question we have right now before the council is, do we want to buy this many test kits? I think if I to buy this,
can I add something to it?
Okay, go ahead, Dr. Hashmi.
So one of the things that I would like to say, we should not buy the kits if we are buying it that the hospital might need it. That's hospital's problem of how they get the kits or not. I think the only advantage of getting the kits ourselves is if we have the thought of doing mass testing, which means that yes, you will have 2 extra people confined who probably didn't have the virus, but it saves a whole population of people who might get exposed. So it's 2 people suffering compared to 100 people's benefit. And it's actually not 100 people, because each individual, it is said, infects 37 other people. So yes, I agree with you that the prevalence of COVID, at least that we know of in the community, is not high, because not a whole lot of people have gone to the hospital. But a lot of people are staying at home, which is wonderful. But the thing is, that doesn't mean that you don't do mass testing. I feel that if you are going to buy it, then you should do it for mass testing. If we are going to buy it to test 100 people, I don't think it's worth it. But yes, if I have a choice, believe it or not, I would rather pay for the test and get the test done, because I would like to know either I'm exposed, not exposed, or if I'm infected, whether I'm spreading it to the 50 other people that I see. So I don't think the idea of buying 20,000 kits to test 100 people and then being our problem that we sell it to the hospital or sell it to somebody else, I don't think it's worth it. I think if the idea is not to test people and not to offer it to every resident in the city of Paris, that you can come and get your status checked as to where you stand, realizing the fact that there will be 2 extra people per 100 people confined, and that too, you're confined for a period of time. You can retest them in another 3 days and see what the test results come back. Because if you see a change in IgM and IgG, you know whether they were infected or not. But I think it's not a very, I would not suggest spending $500,000 to check 100 people. Even if 200 people are confined, so be it. They're confined, let them be confined. But I do think it's a great service. I think we all pay taxes for the city, and I think, yes, it is a large amount of money to be spent to buy 20,000 kits, but guess what? If you can save some lives, personally, I think it's worth it. But again, it's the council decision. And as I said, you can, if you don't like this kit, or if you have better pricing from somewhere else, you can get it, because I've got nothing personal about any of this. Okay. But I would suggest that as a resident of the community, I'd like to be tested. But if, again, I would not buy 20,000 kits to sell them to somebody else. If we're going to buy it, we should buy it so that we offer this service that as the city of Paris is offering. I mean, no other city has done it. I think we'll make history by saying that we have done testing on all our residents that we could offer. We pay taxes to the community, and this is what you get in return from conscientious city. But that's about just what I would like to add.
And Dr. Hoshman, I think I'm in complete agreement with you that if we buy these, that should be the intent, to do the mass screening. And so we've tried to stay ahead of the curve on this. We have tried to do some things, and I think we've done a great job here in Paris.
Absolutely. Absolutely, I agree with that.
We could be ahead of the curve again. We could be on top of this, and we could put Paris, Texas as in the forefront of actually, we could create some data that could be used nationally as well. And I'm sure it would be. If we had a large testing of the population, we could give some data to the rest of the country, which would help the rest of the country know how to fight this. But we could be very well ahead of the curve. And $500,000 is a lot of money, but in an overall budget that we have, and it's not that much money. The people of Paris do pay their taxes. And if this is something that would help reassure everyone in the community, as long as we understand and we have a protocol for how we're going to deal with all the positives, then we could, the benefit to the community could be that we would identify those people out there who have the virus, who are spreading it and don't realize they have it. And we could keep them from spreading it to 15 other people because they don't know they're spreading it. And I think I'm on board with this myself.
Steve, I would like to also say it also gives a lot of reassurance to the ones who will have IgG because they know that they're not going to get infected, number one. And number two, it gives a lot of information to the people who will be completely negative so that they take every known precaution known to mankind, that they don't do things that will expose them to it. So there are multiple benefits, I think, out of it, not just for a positive test, but an equally important result is a negative test, because I may take all the precautions in the hospital and I keep referring just to myself just because of the fact that it's easy. But if you are negative and you have no antibodies, well, guess what? You better be very careful in what you do and where you go and how you practice good hand washing, confining yourself, or what have you.
Okay, I think Dr. Hoshman and I have finished having our semi-medical discussion about this. I've tried to point out the pros and cons to the council. I'm going to open it up for any council member and all council members to please discuss this. I'll start with you, Ms. Stone. You have any questions or comments? Go right ahead.
Yes, thank you. I work in a long-term care healthcare facility, and we are mask ready. And I feel like I agree with Dr. Hoshman, making it be available for the hospital. The hospital needs to be responsible for their own, but as taxpayers, giving the people a chance to get tested that are showing symptoms is better than trying to sell it once we get it, because that's not the purpose why we need to do this. So I totally agree. Working in long-term care, and I have a immune suppressed granddaughter who has respiratory problems, and I would love for the people in the community that she's going to be around to have the opportunity to be tested and not have to buy it, because unfortunately, a lot of people cannot afford it. They're not going to be able to afford it. So I agree with Dr. Hoshman.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Portugal, will you chime in, please, ma'am? Your mic's muted. Your mic's muted.
Can you hear me now?
I sure can now. Go right ahead.
Okay. I'm sorry. I have several questions. First of all, I think it is a great service, but I don't understand why, if we can buy in this kind of volume, why the state health department or just the state of Texas under Governor Abbott can't buy and then distribute equitably to local health departments. Second of all, if that's not possible, I don't understand why Lamar County doesn't buy into this with us and help share the cost, because I would not be willing for the city of Paris tax dollars to freely test Lamar County residents. If we want to test our first responders, first and foremost, medical healthcare workers who live in the city, definitely we would want to test them, and I think test them for nothing. But it looks like the county officials would want to do that for their healthcare workers and for their first responders. So I would think that they would want to buy into this and help share the cost. And I don't understand why that wouldn't come. I have a concern about the false negatives, because then if you tell me I'm negative, but then I'm still eligible to get it.
Ms. Portugal, the false negative rate is almost non-existent as I understand on the test, and that's the advantage this test has over the other.
25% on the other.
On the other test, yeah. If this test tells you you're negative, you can almost take it to the bank.
Okay.
But I agree with you, and we had certainly already discussed whether or not the county, we would, since this would be paid for by tax dollars that are being held by the city, it would be not appropriate to test county members unless our costs were reimbursed at a minimum.
Absolutely. I have one more thing, Ms. Stone. I think you're very correct. There's some people who could not afford this. I think it just simply showing it that you're eligible for Medicaid, or you've just recently lost your job because of this, that it be given to those citizens free. I don't think, for instance, I deserve the test free. I would be willing to pay the cost of the test. And I think it's, whatever we can work out. And if somebody can't prove their eligibility, give it to them for nothing.
Okay, Ms. Knox, I'll open it up for you, please, ma'am.
Okay, well, I do have a concern because, we're all together in this. So we've got to figure out a way to, test the people that live in Lamar County as well as Paris. I mean, why test just people in Paris when Lamar County residents also live or also work and shop in our town? So we need to either partner with the Lamar County Commissioners Court to find some money so that we can get together in this and test the entire county, or else we need to figure something out. But it's not, I don't think it's fair to Paris or to the Lamar County residents to only test Paris and not test Lamar County as well. That's that thing. Also, I realized that the test, there's a cost for the test. Then isn't there an additional cost for the lab to run the test, or am I off kilter on that?
No, the test, here's the way the test, well, first off, let me address both of those things, Ms. Knox. I've spoken with Judge Bell, and I don't know that they have the ability to fund this. And it would have, we could certainly offer the test to their first responders and things like that through some arrangement with them. But we're talking about doing a mass screening of the population of Paris, paid for by the Paris's tax dollars. So even though we might like to include them, remember, very few places are doing this, and they may not agree to do this. So we're going to have to decide for the citizens of Paris, because that's who we.
I understand that, but still, in all, it's kind of like spraying for mosquitoes. You still, it still involves other people. So, I mean, I do have a concern about that. I mean, I'm all for this. I want this to happen. I think we should buy as many kits as we possibly can. I think that we should be able to offer it to our residents, Paris and Lamar County, but deciding on whether or not we are reimbursed for our costs or not, that's going to be the issue that I still have to kind of grapple with, because I really don't think that, we're going to help Paris for sure, but we're not an island unto ourselves. We do have our county residents, and we help. They live here, they shop here. They don't live here. They shop here and they work here. So we have to keep I just don't understand the practicality of only testing Paris residents without also including some Lamar County people in this somehow.
Okay, and I think we would be testing numerous people in the Lamar County area. We might be having a small fee for them to come, right, since they don't pay taxes in Paris. And certainly,
and I understand. And I think anybody would understand.
Yeah. As far as how,
can I add one thing really fast?
Yes, go ahead.
I think when we do the testing, as Ms. Knox says, I think the Lamar County people should be involved, but I think the city of Paris should not incur a cost on them because you guys are paying, you charge them $25, which is the cost of the test,
Okay.
to do their testing. Now, even beyond Lamar County, I think we are good citizens, and if anybody wants to have their test done, they should be allowed to come and have their test done, but the charges should be different. If you offer $25 to Lamar County, that's the cost price for the test. Maybe you could charge $30 to Lamar County, and maybe anybody who lives, maybe somebody in Sulphur Spring wants to live and have the test done, charge them $50 because the least expensive test anywhere that is being done is about $50, and you can actually recover some of your costs that you've spent on buying the stuff by charging a higher price to people who are outside who just want to come and have random testing done.
I could see something like that. I could support something like that for sure. Mhm.
Okay, and as to your question as to how the test is performed,
Actually, how the lab, I mean, how does it, they
let me
process it?
describe it for you because I've seen all the videos and read all about this. What will happen is after the person drives through and gives the information and the data is the phone number, all the things we're going to have is done, then there'll be like 3 stations as I understand it. On the final station, the healthcare professional will be there. The person will lower his or her window down and put his hand out the window. So there's a whole lot safer for the healthcare workers because they don't have to get in their face with that with that swab. There's a lot greater risk of the healthcare workers being exposed when they do a nasal swab than they do a finger stick. So the hand is sticking out, the patient's head and breathing is in the car. Then they come along and do a quick finger stick on the patient. At that point, they have a calibrated disposable plastic pipette and they suck up about 1 drop of blood right to the line on the pipette. Typically for a finger stick, that's what they do. They then take it immediately to a kit. It's about this big. It's about 3 inches long, a little plastic disposable kit, and there's a little well in it to receive the drop of blood. The drop of blood is placed in there, and then two drops of an additional diluent or reagent, whatever you call it, is placed in there. Then it's a chromatography type thing, and it's kind of like dipping a strip of paper towel in water. The water runs up the paper towel. Well, that's exactly what happens here. And there are 3 reagent slices. One of them is the control to make sure you got enough blood in there. And then one is for the IgM, the early antibody that's formed, and the second is for the IgG. 10 minutes after you put that in there, you read the lines. And if the control, so you look at the control has to be lit. If the control is on and either one of the 2 lines is positive, then the patient is a positive. Gotcha. And so it's 10 minutes. And they were planning on having the patients drive on home, and then they would plan on calling them in about an hour. But the time it takes to make the finger stick and get the result is about 15 minutes. So there's no sending it off to a lab, and there's no special significant medical training needed to read it. It's very easy. And these types of tests have been around for a while, and it's very similar to a pregnancy test, things like that. I mean, it's that just you look for the color change and you're done. But that's how that's done.
That sounds great. I mean, you get the results really fast, and and there's no additional cost to a lab for testing. I think that sounds ideal in a situation.
Mr. Hughes, I'm going to open it up for you, sir.
All right, how you doing?
Fine, thank you.
Of course, in a time like this, and we're in charge of budgeting and managing the money for the city, but during this pandemic, that sometimes I think we have to overlook the cost and do what's best for the livelihood of the people. And this disease is, I mean, we've been lucky here to have no deaths, but in other cities and bigger cities is actually killing people. So, I mean, and then the cost of it, I don't see the way of the difference. I mean, now after Dr. Hoshmi said about charging people outside of Lamar County, I can see that if someone's coming in from outside of Lamar County. But for the people that live, shop, because if we don't test the people in Lamar County, if we just take a trip to the grocery store and they're in there shopping, we taking a chance of getting it. So they're no different. The people of Lamar County are no different than the people living in Paris. That, I mean, if the county can help and are willing to help, I understand. But if not, then I feel like it should be free testing just for the safety of the people. I mean, and the community. And as far as any doctor's office like Dr. Hoshmi or the hospital or some people that want to purchase it because we have it, oh, of course I agree to selling it to them for a cost that's agreed upon because they can't get the test. So, I mean, I see there's ways to accommodate some of the costs, but as far as our citizens of Lamar County and Paris, I feel like it should be no cost, and we're doing it just because it's the humanly thing to do, and for our safety and theirs. So, I mean, for anybody, like I say, anybody in the medical field, that profession that wants to purchase it from us, and then we have the access to sell them, oh, I'm in totally agreement. Or anybody from outside of Lamar County that want to get tested. We come up with a price for them, but it'll be, when you get the different prices and stuff, it's just different segments and different legal things that we have to come up with, and we can narrow that down easily by just Lamar County, Paris, Texas, Lamar County free, and anybody outside of there, we come up with a fee or a charge for that. But have we decided, I mean, or I know we hadn't decided, but would that be at a CVS, or where would the testing be done at? And what access would the people, and then what grants you to take the test? Is it the symptoms, or I just want to be tested? What is that going to be based on?
Dr. Hoshmi, you want to fill in that?
Yes. So the purpose of mass testing is it doesn't matter whether you have symptoms or not.
Okay.
Since we are looking for a group of people who either don't have it, or have had it, you do not necessarily go by symptoms. However, the issue of symptoms comes that if you are having symptoms and if your test is positive, you definitely need to be confined. If you are having symptoms, if your test is negative, you should still be confined and your test should be repeated again. So I do not think the idea is that you have to have symptoms for the test, because there are plenty of people who have carried it. Me and you may, for all that matters, we might have been fortunate that we had it already, and now we have IgG antibodies, and we are in a good position to donate our blood to somebody who is more sicker than us. So I think the idea is on mass testing is that anybody who wants to have their test done should have their test done, and they should be allowed to have it. And the location for the testing, as you were asking, I had discussed this with the health department and with the police department. The place is to do where they already have stations set up for something like that is Paris High, which is on the South Loop, so that there is not a traffic jam. And the way we still are in our infancy, we'll have to go and do a run through between all of us who have discussed this and see that when we drive through how much exactly time it takes before we make a public announcement of it that it's being done or not done, so that there is a trial run of what happens, where are our shortfalls, and what needs to be done for that.
Yes, sir. Well, I mean, that's my take on it, and I'm in agreement to purchasing it right away, because, I mean, we got to stay ahead of it. Mayor, you've done a great job in assisting the city of keeping us in front of it as possible. So this is just another step in that direction, in my opinion, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Hughes. Mr. Pilgrim, you're next. Tell us your thoughts.
This is a question for Gene. Gene, have you spoken with this? We're obviously going to have to write the check. Can you hear me? Okay. Have you spoken with the company that we're looking at purchasing these tests from?
I was briefly in a conference call with Dr. Hashmi and the company yesterday.
So you've actually spoken to the company that we're purchasing from. My question is I don't understand how Paris is getting frontline 20,000 tests, and there's a lot larger cities throughout the United States that can't get tests, and that's what I'm wondering is there's a little bit of doubt from a lot of people is to know how we just all of a sudden gotten in. Are we paying more for the test? Are we actually getting to get the test? Are we going to allot this money? Or is it, we've talked to these people, we know for sure that the inventory is there and that it's ready to ship to us?
I think Dr. Hashmi's had the most communication with them. He might better answer that.
Sure. Sure. I think the conversation really has been with me, but Gene was on it yesterday when they sent us the quotation for it. And really, Gene has to talk to them directly. I really don't want to be a part of this because I quite honestly have nothing to do with it other than connecting the company with Gene. And after that, it's up to you people. You can negotiate the price further or not, but the actual price of the test was $27, and I think they came down to $25. But the thing about it is really that financial discussion is between you guys. I don't know them personally to tell you exactly. I know the major suppliers, but I don't know this company myself to know anything about them. So you can talk to them directly. I'm only going by whatever information that they have provided on the to me, and which I forwarded both to Gene and to Dr. Clifford.
I have a hard time writing a $500,000 check, and I agree. We need the test. Obviously, that's a test in the blood. We know who's had it. We know who has not had it. We know if they have it, especially for the healthcare workers, for people like Dr. Hashmi and Dr. Clifford in their offices to keep their people safe and their patients. I agree. I mean, the blood test seems to be the step in the right direction. I have a hard time writing a $510,000 check, and we don't for sure know who these people are. A, B, they have the inventory. We think they do. We've talked to them. We've had one conference call that it sounds like. But Gene, I want you to be comfortable with it, and you tell me, hey, I feel good about writing this $500,000 check. And as far as it states for whether or not we pay or not, we've got to recoup the money somehow. I don't know if there is a government, federal government deal that can come back. I'm kind of in agreement with Portugal. I think the state, I find it odd that the state have the ability and the purchase power that they have not already purchased these and put these in front of us for the public. $500,000 is a pretty good chunk of money for the city of Paris, Texas. Also, would like to see if we need to have some kind of county involvement, because I have a hard time with people getting in line. And if you live in the county or you live in the city, whether or not we're going to test you or not. If you live in the county, I think you had to have the same right as the city to test this, because we're not getting a good test. A lot of these people that live in the county work in the city every day. Think about Campbell Soup. How many people at Campbell Soup work in the city and work in the county, or live in the city and live in the county? I mean, that, you're not really getting a good test, like Dr. Clifford was saying. If you're going to mass treat, mass test, and Dr. Hashmi, I think everybody has to be involved. Also, how would we recoup our costs where it was beneficial for everyone? That's a huge, huge question. It's $500,000 that we're talking about here. And then also budget-wise next year, we're going to see some pretty, in my opinion, there's going to be some businesses that probably will not be here next year because of this economic downturn. Also, we're going to lose some sales tax. There are going to be some property tax issues next year that we might foresee. If we see anything there, Gene, budget-wise, that could get us in trouble next year, we may have to dip into some reserves next year. What financially-wise, one thing we haven't talked about, but what is the financial structure? Are we okay if we dip out of this? What is your thoughts on that?
Well, it's a little early for us to be able to tell what the sales tax impact is at this point. The from the time of collection of the tax to the time it's remitted to the city, there's a 2-month delay in that. So up until the point that we've received sales taxes from 2 months ago, we're still actually up for the year. So I would expect in the May report, and maybe possibly even the payment we get in April, we might see if we're starting to see a decline in that or not. Property tax wise, you can be exactly right. If there's some businesses that go out of business, it's going to be a lot harder for them, to pay property taxes. It's, like I say, it's a little early for us to have any data in order to kind of estimate that at this point. In terms of reserve, I think our reserves are adequate to do this at this point if you decide to do it. We have a policy that we maintain at least 4 months operating reserve. My early estimates of where we will be at the end of the fiscal year indicate that we could spend $500,000 and still maintain that reserve. Now, of course, it's an estimate. It's not a guarantee, but it's an estimate. I only found out about the company yesterday when Dr. Hashmi kind of got me into the conversation because there were some questions on contact information and stuff that needed the city that needed to be filled in. If you want me to do a research on this firm to try to find out more about them, I can attempt to do that, but it's going to, take me a little time to do that because I certainly hadn't had time this morning, even though I looked for about an hour and a half to try to find as much information out as I could on them. It just takes time to do that kind of research, and maybe possibly even explore.
I forwarded that email that came from them.
Yeah.
And that has some information. Again, I don't know what all that information is. You might have to look into it yourself because I'm not familiar with the company at all, other than the fact what they are offering. But if you look at the email, they have a phone number of that same gentleman who was on the conference call. Actually, I've never talked to him before yesterday either. So most of the thing which they provided me was medical information. And so you have their email. If you look at that email, and they have this number of this gentleman who with a 972 number.
Let me add something to that, Clayton. I did go through that email and I read everything about it. This company, there's two companies involved. The technology company that created the kit is called Phama. It looks like it should have an R in it, but Phamatech, Phamatech Inc. They have produced 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I'm going to estimate about 25 or 30 significant tests that all got FDA approval. Okay, so it's a legitimate company that does these tests. Then there's the company that is distributing their product, and I don't have any information about them, but they're kind of a typical wholesaler. They're taking the product from the company and then shipping it in significant quantity.
I know one thing, that apparently some part of this company is in California, and I think the distributing part is in Dallas. But again, I don't know the details of that.
I'm comfortable with buying tests. Don't get me wrong. In this time and place of what we're going through, there's a lots of promises that's been made everywhere right now and I don't want to allot $500,000 and tie it up with the company, and 30, 60 days from now we still don't have tests and we're trying to get our money back, and what's the point? The question is, are the tests there, and are they going to be able to ship them if it's 60 days? If they're like, oh well, they're back ordered because our manufacturer and wherever they had to shut their plant down, and then we're going to be what's the protocol. If, is there any, are we going to be able to get our money back out of them in 25 days whenever they say, they're back ordered? I mean, I don't know.
I think if they will not provide the test this week to us, we shouldn't buy it, because there's no point in ordering tests which are going to come 2 weeks from now. If we are going to do something, we need to do it now. There's no point in paying for testing. I mean, we don't know what the situation will be 2 weeks from now. So if the company cannot promise that they can deliver the test within the week's time, I don't think it's worth it. I agree with you on that.
I would be more comfortable if they would ship the test and we actually have them in hand before we had to make the payment. That'd be much more normal than a rapid payment, like they're requesting. Maybe they're in a position to make that demand, but I'm not comfortable with ordering them, paying them, and then they ship them when they choose to ship them.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.
I think I just have a hard time believing that there's just all these tests in this warehouse and that there's not the city of New York and maybe the New Orleans and some of these other towns that are not, that are really taking a hit with this thing, that are not standing in line for these things, and they have a whole lot more purchase power than Paris, Texas. Granted, we're an awesome city and we've got some great things, but there's some hard hit areas that don't have the ability to test. New York, they're just sending people home now, pretty much trying to keep everybody separated. So that's the thing is it sounds like, that maybe either this test is not as wanted, or do they have them? That's my question. But and it sounds like we need to do a little more due diligence. Is that correct on Gene's side? Maybe for him to talk to them and say, hey, we want to make sure they're coming, and what would be the time of order and all that. And I think that would also give us some time that this mass treating, if we're going to have, if you get everybody tested in 20,000 people tested, it's going to be 360 people a day tested. That's going to be a pretty large undertaking as far as logistics of just a line of cars going in and out, and physicians or nursing. I mean, y'all, the two doctors on the call know exactly. I mean, y'all would know a lot better. It's going to take a pretty monumental task of people in the Lamar County, also the Lamar County Health Department, and their ability to make sure that we keep the data together, make sure that the tests are administered and sent correctly, et cetera, et cetera. Is that kind of a concern with anybody?
We've been trying to streamline that process, Clayton, because it is a concern. If we tried to gather all the data as people arrive, to go through the process and be tested, we don't think we could do very many in a day. What we were looking at, and I talked to the health department about, is having a window of time where people would call a call center set up at the health department, and they would register basically, and give all their information, provide their financial payment if that's involved, and do all of that up front and be assigned, like a number or something. And then when they arrive at Paris High School, the people there will have an iPad. They'll have a list of people on there with all their information, and they have a sticker with an ID or something that they will put on the car, let them go down. The person will test them and do all of that, match up the numbers so we know who we're dealing with, when the tests come back. We think we can if we do all that information gathering first, prior to the day that the testing gets done, based on what was done out at Amarillo, when they use that method, in a couple of minutes, you can have somebody through. And we're going to have to be able to do it roughly that fast if we're going to get several hundred people done a day. And like I say, I just don't know, just because we offer it, how many people are going to be willing to come and, to do that. They're probably more willing with a finger prick than they are sticking a swab up their nose. But, we don't know. We can't force people to come and get tested. You might have 5,000 people, out of 20,000. If you do the whole county, we're talking 50,000 people between the city and the county both. So I don't think all of them are going to come. If they're asymptomatic, they may not, want to go through that. But like I say, if everybody in the county got tested, 20,000 wouldn't be enough. I just, don't know how many people would be willing to come through. And let's say we could do 300 a day. That's a bunch of days, it's required. It's just, it just takes a while to to run everybody through.
Can I ask a question, please?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm sitting here with my 2018, because I couldn't find 2019, Lamar County Appraisal District. My estimated taxes in 2018 to the county was $593.47. My estimated taxes to the city of Paris, who's paying for this, is $565.25. I pay more Lamar County taxes than I do city of Paris. Lamar County doesn't come when I call an ambulance. They don't come when I call the police. They don't fix my street out here. Why should we pay for the citizens of Lamar County free? I know they need it. It's a protection to us, but they should be required to pay us for the test, at least our cost. I'm for this and I will vote for it, but only if Lamar County residents are putting in their fair share. I'm responsible, this whole body is responsible to the citizens of Paris who pay taxes. More taxes from the Lamar County. They should put in their fair share.
Okay, thank you, Paula.
Otherwise, we're socialized county.
Okay, and I hadn't let Mr. Plata talk. Mr. Plata, I'll open the floor up to you, and then we'll have some follow-up questions. Go ahead, sir.
Steve, I've got to go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Ken.
I've been listening to everything, and it's good that I got to listen to everything before everybody. What I'd like to say is, first of all, this Lamar County thing, I've been on the council before, and people have come up and they move out of parish just so they don't have to pay taxes. They don't like it. And as much as they gripe about that, I'm really not in favor of paying for Lamar County people for this too. I agree with Ms. Portugal because we're supposed to serve the citizens of Paris, and the taxpayers are funding this, and I know that the citizens of Lamar County are amongst us all the time, and we were right side by side. But on the other hand, they also make the choice to move out just because they don't like what the city of Paris does, and they tell me that to my face. And so, but don't get me wrong, I am for this. I understand, and another thing I don't understand though is that Paris, the citizens of Paris, us as a body, we're willing to find the money somehow to do this because we know it's the right thing to do. I think Judge Bale and his commissioners could do the same thing. Some way they could do it. We're doing it, and we're all right with it because it's the right thing to do. And plus, and if you think about it, if you find out that you're fine, and you will take more precautions to stay safe if Lamar County residents are not involved in this. So to me, I think if we're going to do this, it's for the citizens of Paris, and I think it'd be a good thing. But I know, Gene, I know that you will do the right thing when it comes to purchasing, and I agree with Mr. Pilgrim on that too. But I think we have some good people in place to make sure everything goes pretty smooth as it can. I know there's going to be hiccups along the way. Something as this big, there's bound to be hiccups. So But I'm for this, but I'm not for the funding for Lamar County to do it too, not for free. That's my take on it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Plata. I'm actually in agreement with you and Ms. Portugal as well. I think we could work something out with the county, either if they either see if they want to pay the cost of their residents that come through, or at a minimum, we could offer it to them at our cost. I mean, something like that would be possible. That'd be a decision we'd have to make later. We're not making that decision today, although certainly I think it's important to express your opinions on that. I have a question for Gene. Gene, I have seen on the briefings TV how various and sundry government officials are stating that the testing for COVID-19 will be free for everyone in the country. Have you not seen that? And if that is the case, is there some possibility we would get reimbursed this money from the federal government?
Yeah, as I understand, like I say, it's still kind of all the details working out, but on a city our size, it's my understanding that we'd have to apply for any reimbursement through the state. Only the larger cities entities can apply directly to the federal government for part of that. I don't know all the details of that process. I think it may still be being worked out, but there's some possibility we could get reimbursed for it. I think that in terms of the county participating, ideally the situation would be if they would split the initial cost with us. Each commissioner, I worked for the county for 8.5 years. I've got a pretty good idea how it works over there. That if they could reduce their road and bridge fund budget, which is how they do repair county roads and stuff. If each one of them reduced it just $62,500, that would be $250,000, and that would be half the cost. They would be sharing equally with us. There's as many or more people in the county as there are inside the city. I think the county population in total is about 50,000. So, I mean, that seems a reasonable approach to do that. And then we apply for whatever refunding we can get, or if we make any charges. But, you know, if they will participate 50-50 like that with us, you know, we can decide if we wanted to charge or not.
But we're going to have to make the decision like right here and now to whether to order these kits. I understand that if we don't act on it in 24 hours, the kits are going to go away someplace else.
I don't know that. My understanding from the conversation yesterday was that if we ordered them, we were supposed to have to pay for them within 24 hours of getting the invoice, which they were going to email. And that's one of the things that I had the biggest concern about. They can't ship them to us before we'd have to pay for them, I don't believe. Because they'd be coming, the company itself is in San Diego. So if they're at that company location, they'd have to come all the way from California to get here. And they're not going to be able to do that in 24 hours, probably.
Okay. All right. Any other comments on this? All right.
Mayor Clifford.
Yes.
I didn't have my mute button off. I'm sorry. I think that we should go ahead and get the kits, and then I think we should go ahead and get them. I think we should, because that's what this meeting is about, right? Yes or no on the thing. Yeah. All right, well, let's go ahead and get the kits. And then, you know, we could be talking about how we divvy them up with the county or not, or if we charge everybody the reimbursement fee or not. I just think that there are, the urgent thing is to decide whether or not we're going to get the kits. And I personally think that we need to get the kits. We can talk semantics and how we're going to go ahead with the traffic control and how many people are on the parking lot administering the tests. We can do that later on. But I think right now, in order to get the kits, it's important to me that we have these kits available to us and we can argue the semantics or work out the semantics later on, I believe.
Okay, and my feeling on this, I'm in agreement with Linda, and as to taking the funds out of reserve, we hope and pray that in the rest of our lifetimes we don't have a crisis like this. And this is the biggest crisis that this city, I think, has been through, other than maybe the tornado or the ice storm. But I still think those pale in comparison to this one and how it's affecting everybody. So this is arguably a once-a-time event, and that's what reserve funds are designed for those unexpected one-time expenses. And so I'm personally in favor of going ahead and doing this. And if we can work something out with the county, we'll work something out with the county. Perhaps the citizens of the county will decide to make phone calls that they'd like for their commissioners to be involved in this as well. So, but you're correct. We do need to make the decision now as to whether we're going to spend this money. Any other comment? We're wide open here. Let's talk. Anything else?
Dr. Clifford, this
Yes.
is Stephanie. The question has arisen as to whether or not we can resell these. I just don't want anybody, this was posed to me about a half hour before we got on this meeting, and I just haven't had the time to run the legal traps on that. So I can't give you a definite opinion on whether we could do that or not.
Okay, I appreciate it. Chad has, I'd want some questions here. I think we're opening this up for some at least discussion. I think Chad had a note popped up that he had a question. Go ahead and unmute your mic and ask the question, sir. I guess.
Okay, I think I got it now. Sorry. Hey, let me start out. First off, I don't envy any of you guys having to go make these decisions right now, and you've done a good job so far. So thank you for that. My question is one, who is the distributor of these kits? Because the way you guys are talking, it doesn't lend to much confidence into who this person is.
I don't think there's any problem with that, Chad. I've got this email. Let me see if I can find the name of the distributor. I'll look for that here for a second.
The distributor, the company that's shipping them, is MD America Supply Group, if that's the one you're looking for.
MD is in Mary David?
Yes.
Okay.
The company's name is Pharmatech, and Pham is a man's name. It's not a variation of pharmacy or abbreviation of pharmacy. It's the man's name. He's the president of the company. His last name is Pham.
Okay, thank you. One more question here. Dr. Hashmi, he stated early on that he would like to purchase these kits from the city of Paris. Why can't Dr. Hashmi, PRMC, or any other healthcare provider pool their resources and purchase these test kits themselves?
Dr. Hashmi had an emergency. He's not on the call right now, but as I understand it from talking to him, and he kind of touched on that, the kits right now are being shipped out in large lots only. And so they don't want to deal with 100,000 individual people that want 25. They come in groups of 25, and that's the least number. So the one box of them is 25. They don't want to be shipping a box of 25 out to hundreds of thousands of people. They'd rather ship large numbers to one location and then spreads out from there. So that's my understanding of why they can't buy just a few kits right now.
That's what I mean. Is like you take a group of these healthcare providers to purchase 20,000 kits. Could they possibly do that?
They probably could. And I think that may be what you may have heard some of the drugstore chains I've been reading have been starting to offer testing. I suspect that the chain itself purchased the large lot of tests. But these tests have just come out very recently. They didn't have them. They've only recently developed them, and the FDA has rushed the approval of them because of the epidemic. These typically take a long time to get FDA approval, but they've rushed the approval on these things. They have done some testing, and so they're verified, but not to the typical amount that things the FDA used to require. But they've relaxed these things to fast track these.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me ask this question. If we proceed on with this, would y'all be comfortable when I talk to the company to try to get them to delay the payment until after we actually receive the kits, rather than, because as it's been proposed to us, we pay for the kits as soon as we're invoiced, and even though the kits may not arrive for some time later.
I'd like to know that it isn't going to be 2 weeks or something like that. I'd like to have a pretty hard estimate for when it would be arriving. I mean, surely if they're selling them right now, they must have them. So I guess we just have to leave that to your discretion, or you could call individual council members and get a consensus if you on what you get back from this.
Okay.
Any other comment or questions?
Yes, I have a comment. I'm concerned with, as well as Clayton is, the idea that in most scam situations, I'm sure we've all received the email before that you have an offer that's too good to refuse, and you have a limited time to respond to it. That sounds similar or consistent with most scam emails that we probably receive. I'm concerned that if we send money prior to having anything in hand, it falls in line and maybe somebody with more experience, the chief of police, could chime in on his thoughts on scams as well. If this is consistent with a scam, and maybe Gene, are there any securities where you could send the money to a holding account prior to releasing it to the company? I think everybody's concerned is $500,000 is a lot of money, but worse than sending in $500,000 is sending $500,000 for nothing. And so I'm just concerned, without due diligence, we could be throwing money away on a scam that's just too good to be true and needs to be acted upon immediately.
Well, I understand what you're saying. That's kind of what I was trying to say, is that if we could delay payment until after we receive the kits and know we've got them in hand, which, depending on how long it took us to ship them, might not only be a few days as opposed to having to do it on day one. Because if the company's, like say, is located in California, and if we, for some reason, didn't get the kits and had to go after them legally, I don't think that TML or Stephanie, either one, would be too excited about trying to sue a company based in California, try to get that back. But I would think, we're a governmental entity, we're not going anywhere, that we would be a safe bet, to pay our bill, once we receive the merchandise. And that's kind of how I look at it. Lots of businesses that sell to the city like selling to cities, not just Paris, but all cities, because, we're stable and we're going to be here and we're going to pay our bills. So I would like, if possible, to be able to get the kits before we make the payment.
Gene, could we just get a reference letter, maybe from another city that's purchased from these folks, or something real quick that would alleviate some of the pressure? And then also, like you said, good business. I mean, if they're getting money from a municipality, it's not we're not loaning the money. We've got so much in reserves. I don't see an issue at all. I mean, we can wire the money to them tomorrow evening. Or if we wanted to, could we send our own transportation to go pick them up, carry a cashier's check with us if we wanted to get down to we could really get old school doing it that way. But I'm just saying, just to keep it from, I hate to write a $500,000 check and wire money somewhere, and then they're back ordered. Oh, well, this, that, and the other. And we could have used $500,000 and bought tests from somebody, I have a hard time with writing a check like you, Gene, and I would really like to have some kind of closure to that. I want the test as bad or worse than anybody on the call, and I want everybody to be tested, and I want this thing to get over with, but I do not want to give $500,000 of, it's just, we're a fiduciary, we're voted in to do that. We can't give them that money without having some kind of comfort level for the city of Paris and for the taxpayers.
Yeah, a lot of their tests that they've had approved in the past, as Dr. Clifford was mentioning earlier, or home-based test, for various drugs and stuff. I mean, a reference letter, I guess I could ask them for a group of references or something to talk to. But tracking somebody down on a reference, it's going to take a little time to do as well.
Well, Gene, I'm kind of agreeing with Clayton as well on this, and I kind of want to go ahead and pass this with the caveat that you are able, for whatever way, you are able to confirm that it's legitimate. I mean, everything I've got here looks legitimate. They got 26 patents. 26 tests that have been approved by the FDA. But the thing I don't want to have happen is exactly what Clayton said. We order it and it's 2 weeks before we get it. 2 weeks is an eternity right now. And I'd like explain to them we're a municipality, explain to them that time is of the essence and we need some way to guarantee that they'll get it to us expeditiously, and also let you verify that they're legit. And see if you can satisfy yourself to your satisfaction that they are legitimate and that we will get it in a timely fashion, then I'm okay approving this contingent on that. If you have a gray zone, if you'll call us or call it another emergency meeting, that's fine. But if you can find something out, make some phone calls, see what you can find out, and then let us know through either a group email or something that you're convinced. And if that's the case, then we could go ahead and purchase them.
And Gene, I'm in a, once again, I mean, as far as buying them, of course, I've stated that I'm 100% behind that. But I mean, Clayton did bring up a good point about them being so ready for us and not everybody else. But if, as far as the shipment, Dr. Hashmi did say he think the warehouse is in Dallas. He said,
and if
he thought, he wasn't sure. So, but if it is, then like Clayton said, we could send transportation up there to pick it up with a cashier's check or something. So investigate that side with them, because I mean, we want, and like Dr. Hashmi said, is if we can't get them this week or next week, then it does us no good. 2 weeks from now is a little too late. It's like what Dr. Hashmi was saying, that he wanted them to get them to us this week, if possible. I mean, next week rather. So just check on the timeliness of them getting them to us. And like I say, if they're in Dallas, then we're close enough to get them.
Excellent point, Mr. Hughes. But before we even stop, I just want to say how much I like this council and how much this council works together and has differing viewpoints and comes to reasoned conclusions. It's been the best council I've ever worked on, and that's not saying anything bad about prior councils, but this council is amazing, and the city of Paris is lucky to have you guys. So, Gene, how does that sound?
Okay, I'll start that process, and if I run into an issue or something, I'll get back with y'all.
Okay, I'm going to open the floor up for a motion if we're ready to stop discussion on this.
Remember, we only have 24 hours in order to put our order in, so we've got to.
We don't have much time, Gene. So you, if that is in fact the case.
Well,
yeah,
I mean,
that'll be one of my first questions.
All right, y'all are gonna make me do it. Okay. I make a motion that we appropriate the $510,000 for the purchase of these kits for the purpose of testing the people in this area, potentially a drive-through testing area, and that we do this contingent on Mr. Anderson certain that we will get timely delivery or pickup of the kits, and also that that we're avoiding that he to his convenience. There's no scam, nothing going on here. It's not above board. So that's my long convoluted motion.
I second it.
Second.
All right, let's go one by one. I'm in favor. I'll go next to my thing, Ms. Stone.
Yes.
Next here is Mr. Pilgrim.
Yes.
Next is Mr. Plata
Yes.
and Ms. Portugal
Yes.
and Ms. Knox
Yes.
and Mr. Hughes.
Yes.
Did I miss anybody? The motion passes unanimous. I guess no other business on the item. I make a motion for adjournment.
Second.
And we're adjourned. Thank you.